Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I'd appreciate it, and I update daily. If you like this watch, you can purchase it on our website, thewatchbox.com. And today we are discussing the Bremont Boeing Model 1. This is a stainless steel watch 43 millimeters in diameter from the Boeing collection of British-based watchmaker Bremont, a timepiece that is very appealing for a basic model. It's awfully deluxe in its detailing and its specification. I've often said that F.P. Journe's Chronomètre Bleu is amazing because it's the most desirable watch in the line, and it's also the starting point of the model line, and in many respects Bremont achieves the same feat in that the basic watches in the collection are among the most appealing, and that's certainly evident here. Now, the stainless steel is a certain alloy that's shared with Boeing. It's tough, it's resilient, it's nicely finished, it's corrosion resistant, it's all of these things, but effectively it's stainless steel. What really matters is that the mid-case is DLC coated and the case profile itself is called triptych, so called because it's broken up into three principal components for aesthetics and ergonomics. 43 millimeters is the distance across the bezel. It's not the distance including the cowled crown guard or the cowl itself, and the watch is fairly thick, and you can see with the sheer flank, though 14.5 millimeters, there are thicker watches. The particular profile of this case makes it problematic with dress cuffs, but it should be fine underneath a jacket sleeve. Lug to lug, it's a big watch, but it's wearable. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see that this one spans 51.8 millimeters, and it has a robust 22 millimeter lug spacing. You also note the lugs fix the Seattle style strap, as it's called, quite securely using hex screws. I prefer that over spring bars as it's more secure. As soon as you're paying thousands of dollars for a watch, you really should get screws, not spring bars. So Bremont doing things the right way. I also want to give you a pure profile shot of the watch on my wrist so you can better see how that triptych case form allows a big watch to fit on a small wrist. And that is important to note because Nick and Giles English, who design all of these things before they go to market, decided that they should separate the canister that holds the dial and the movement from the form of the lugs. And in doing so, they create that tripartite design where you have a case back, a mid case, and then the lugs. And the lugs are draped around the wrist, completely separate from the canister that holds the business end of the movement and display. This makes for a form-fitting watch that's almost cambered in the form of a tonneau. If you can imagine Franck Muller, it's much like that. So though big, it fits small. You'll also note that the strap, which they call Seattle, is effectively a textile and water resistant. It's not made of leather. It is generously bolstered and it has a contrasting blue stitch. It is Boeing blue, as Boeing, the Seattle-based aeronautical firm, is the partner in this venture. Bremont has a number of co-branding deals, most of which are relevant to motorsports or aviation, and this is from the latter category. You will note that although it is a massive strap, it's nicely made and thoughtfully detailed, so it has equal measures of beastly proportions and beautiful small details. Like with the buckle, you can see how it has a form that is both satin finished on the top and then satin finished on the flank and polished on its bevel. It's not a default design, and I appreciate that. Also, underneath, you can see how it shoulders the strap when it's buckled down, with the strap fitting in a slotted channel between the two flanks. Little things like this distinguish the Bremont watches. Now you can see those hex screws fixing the strap to the flank, and you also note that the mid case is striated to give it a little bit of definition and a strong horizontal aspect, as well as being DLC blackened to visually break up the mass of the case and profile. It's a design that I appreciate, just as I appreciate the micro slash cut knurling of the bidirectional aviator style bezel. Another feature I like deeply about this bezel is the fact that it features a sapphire cap on top of a luminescent base. So it has that same lustrous, almost three-dimensional aspect that you get from something like a Blancpain 50 Fathoms or even Bremont's own Supermarine series of dive watches. The bezel is narrow, however, which I appreciate because it visually opens up the dial. Now you can see that although it's not a dive bezel, you can line up the index with the minute hand or the hour hand as you see fit for an impromptu timing mechanism. I always prefer to have some sort of rotating bezel with an index to time intervals rather than a chronograph, because I simply find that a bezel with minute calibrations is easier to read than a chronograph register. You also note that the dial is a matte white base. It's a striking combination of high contrast and a non-standard aviator's aesthetic. This is anything but another instrument-style aviator's watch. You can see Arabic numerals, no nonsense, high contrast, and then outboard applied indices with luminescence. You'll also note the stylized baton hands at center, featuring blacked out frames for high contrast against the base, and the half-fairing index of the seconds hand, which you'll note is both loomed and sort of a half delta in Boeing blue. You'll also note that there's a discrete date window at 4:30 for symmetry across the dial. As you'll note, it doesn't replace any of the indices, and that's actually how I prefer my date. You'll also note that the watch is a COSC certified chronometer, though assembled in London, the movement itself is COSC chronometer certified before being installed. So the watch is made in London, the movement is Swiss. Got that? Good. Now you'll note this little bracketed form just above the chronometer note. That is because this watch features a shock protection system, and I'm going to get close and I'm going to give us a bit more light here because this one requires some explaining. What you see right here that says tested beyond endurance, those are actually 3 elastomers that physically suspend the movement between the movement spacer and the case itself. So if you drop the watch, if you engage in some sort of foolish concussive activity like tennis while wearing it, there's actually a measure of shock resistance built not just into the balance staff, but into the separation between case and movement itself. It's exactly what Richard Mille does, but for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars less. It is a Sellita SW 220 movement in there. It's a 221 in chronometer spec. It features hacking or stop seconds, bidirectional winding, a 38-hour power reserve. There is a quick set for the date, and the watch is 100 meters water resistant. So though aviation inspired thanks to that textile and polymer strap and a screw-down crown that endow the watch with 100 meters of resistance, you can absolutely take this watch swimming. It's equally appropriate for those who perhaps like to dream of piloting seaplanes. Now you'll note that this caseback is highly stylized with a custom rotor and engine turning. So not only is it anything but a base level SW220 being COSC grade, it's also highly customized and decorated to suit. Now you will note that there is a dramatically profiled cowling for the crown at 4 o'clock. Not only does this take the crown out of the line of fire for impact and abrasion, but when the crown is threaded down, and you will note that the crown has a handsome lacquered propeller inlay, when it is threaded down, it has absolute protection against shearing and shock. It's also cool to look at and nicely finished. You can see this handsome, endearing, and decidedly distinct pilot's timepiece from Bremont. Although one of the entry-level models, I also find it one of the most appealing that they make. It's also a sports all-arounder with more than its fair share of durability engineered in. See and make this British chronometer yours on the Watchbox.